Now this is case number 218 on the calendar in the matter of Irizarry versus Irizarry. Parties have been sworn in, Judge. You may be seated. Sir, have a seat. Ma'am, you also.
Miss Irizarry, I'm going to make short shrift of one part of your case,
Okay.
and that has to do with rent, this little tidbit of rent that you want from the defendant, who's your brother. I want to stay with the claim for the destroyed motorcycle, because that's really the basis of your claim, the destroyed motorcycle. Am I right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Is your claim, your brother doesn't deny that he was riding on your motorcycle, he totaled it, damage was substantial to the motorcycle, over $3,000. His defense is that you should have had better insurance. And, shh, is that right? And he is counterclaiming because he says if you had better insurance, he wouldn't have had to have paid all the medical bills when he was injured when he had this accident with your motorcycle. So that is his counterclaim, and he is counterclaiming for $5,000. Is that right, sir?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
When did you get this motorcycle, Miss Irizarry?
Actually 2 months before he wrecked it on me.
And how much did you pay for it?
$3,500.
You have the bill?
No. I don't have the bill, but actually I have, from the place that I bought it from, papers of the same year and same bike and same model for the price.
Who did you buy it from?
A private owner.
Tell me about the day that your brother borrowed it.
He usually takes it. He'll ask us to borrow it, and he always tells us if anything ever happens, he'll go ahead and he'll pay $3,000 for the bike if anything ever happened to the bike. The day he asked me to borrow it...
when did he say that? Do you mean, sis, can I borrow your bike, and if anything happens to it, I'll pay you $3,000? Is that what he says?
Well, in Florida...
I want to know. I'm asking you.
Well, what happened is in Florida, you don't need insurance on a motorcycle, and I told him...
You didn't answer my question.
Go ahead.
So you mean what your brother said to you was, sis, can I borrow your bike, and if anything happens to the bike, I'm going to give you $3,000. That's what he said.
After I hesitated a couple times, yes.
Huh?
After I hesitated a couple times, yes, that's what he said.
Now, on what date did he borrow the bike when it was in this accident?
June 6th of 2002.
Tell me about that date.
Actually, that day, he just, like normal, asked to borrow the bike, and he went on his way. I was with his girlfriend and my fiancé, and we were going to a swimming pool, and one of his buddies had told us that he seen our bike on the side of the road with 2 police cars around it, and that was pretty much it. We drove up to the scene where it was. My brother wasn't there at the time. The bike was crashed. The 2 officers were there, were actually on their way to charge my brother with reckless driving before we got there. And he is, at the time, was a fellow officer, and I guess he knew one of the officers there and kind of got my brother out of that. And we went to the hospital. We went to the hospital.
I'm sure he's really pleased that you just advised me of that.
Well,
go ahead.
Being honest. And and we pretty much met him at the hospital. The cops informed us that we had the tow truck coming on their way to tow the bike, and it was undrivable. And that was pretty much it. And I went to the hospital.
And he was in the hospital?
Yes.
How long did you stay in the hospital?
4 hours.
4 hours. What'd they do for you?
They just cleaned the wounds and sent me on my way. I was down for about a little shy of 2 months. Couldn't work, couldn't move.
Why couldn't you work?
Because I had road rash all over my whole body.
So you borrowed your sister's bike, you totaled it. Go ahead. Let me hear you.
The day I had borrowed the bike, I was asked to drive the motorbike to see if there was any knocking noise. Her and her boyfriend had asked me to test drive the bike to see if it does any noises. I took it for a quick ride. On my way back, I was going over railroad tracks. The back tire popped out on me. I tried to control the bike. I couldn't control it. It says I was swerving in and out of the lanes. The total distance from the tracks to the board of the bike was 370 feet. I only slid about 50 feet to 75 the most. And then after that, when I got into the hospital, I told her I got AAA, told her back to the house, put it in a bargain trader, we're on eBay, because she had got rid of a car with a blown motor that way. I said, we'll do it that way too.
I don't know what you're talking about. What gibberish are you talking about?
Neither do I.
I told her not to put the bike in the junkyard, not to tow it. Tow it back to the house, and I'll be able to sell it. So that way, you know, it's not all the way money out of pocket. So here I am. I'm sitting here thinking about, well, shouldn't she have insurance on it or provided me with a helmet or anything? And the back tire was totally bald, that it started showing spots to the back tire.
Had you ever used this motorcycle before, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
How many times before had you used it?
Quite a few. Sometimes I was stuck with the bike. Sometimes she would ask.
Shh, don't speak.
You ran out of gas.
Don't speak. I'm talking to him. Had you used it more than 10 times?
Oh, yes.
More than 20 times?
About, yes.
How old are you?
I'm 22.
How is your vision?
Good.
Really good?
Yeah.
Good vision. Good enough so that you can tell if a tire is bald or not, right?
Right, but
Don't say but me no buts. But me no buts. So on this particular date, you say you had not borrowed the bike, but you were asked to do a test drive on the bike.
yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Baloney.
Judge Judy continues in a moment.
You were going so fast, the bike was airborne, sir.
Right.
Right.
And it also says
Shut. That's what it says.
And later today,
You ultimately returned the dress to her in a shopping bag.
Yes.
Wrong!
Right. No, you're right. You're exactly right.
That's why I'm here.
real cases, real people. Judge Judy. Chris was Christina's fault.
Let me see the paperwork she has with regard to a bike of similar condition. Then I may just cut it in half because I don't believe a word she says about how much she paid for it, because if any normal person has some bill of sale with regard to a bike.
I also have a police report stating that he was driving recklessly and 2 written witnesses on the report.
Can I see the police report, please?
Yes. It even says that when he hit the track tire, how can he actually go in the air?
I'm going to ask you this question. I know that you don't need insurance, and certainly I'm going to take his counterclaim until I'm speaking. Don't you understand that?
Yes, go ahead. I'm sorry.
You may be younger, but I'm smarter.
Definitely.
All I really want to do is read this so that I can yell at him a little bit more and then figure out how much I'm going to give you for your bike. And then I'll let you go with your fiancé, and your fiancé is going to get you outside and say to you, how could you have talked about my job like that? Right? In front of all those people, that he got him off on a charge? Wait until he gets you outside. Explain to her the ramifications of that, sir. Not smart, you know. Well, there are witnesses here that say that you were going so fast the bike was airborne, sir.
Right.
Right.
And it also says
That's what it says.
And also-
Anyway, you borrow somebody's property, you don't take good care of it, you got to pay for it. The fact that she is not required to have insurance in the state where you live is kind of ridiculous, because if he had used your bike and instead of just hurting himself, he had killed somebody else, you know who they would come after?
Me.
Right.
Yes.
Right. I probably think you got a good deal on this bike and paid maybe $2,500 for it, and that's what you're going to get. As far as your counterclaim is concerned, it's the dumbest thing I ever heard. Absolutely the dumbest thing I ever heard. You did the wrong thing.
well, I'm suing her because of the tire, not because of the insurance.
Listen to me. The tire was bald?
That's right.
There's a term in the law called assumption of risk. Let me tell you what that means. That means that if you do something that's dumb, you assume the risk and the consequences of your actions. Now, unless you can tell me that her eyesight is so much better than yours and you could not see that this tire was bald, according to your testimony, you drove this bike at least 20 times in the 2 months that she owned the bike.
That's right.
And that if you were going to get on the bike and if you knew that the tire was bald,
I told
because
him-
you could see that the tire was bald, then you shouldn't have gotten on the bike. You should say, sis, I'm not going to do a test drive on this bike until you put a new tire on it, because the tire's no good. But if you get on the bike, knowing that the tire is bald, you assume the risk of anything that happens. Do you understand?
Yes, ma'am.
Good. Goodbye.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
Got me out of a ticket. She was being reckless. I don't think I was reckless driving.
So we don't talk no more.
And now the next case.
All parties in the matter of Sharon versus Johnston, step forward, please.
18-year-old student Courtney Sharon is suing her former co-worker, 25-year-old animal hospital manager Felicia Johnston, for destroying her homecoming gown.
Miss Sharon, according to your complaint, you loaned the defendant a dress. It was a formal dress that you had worn to your homecoming party or something, some other such thing. And she returned it eventually ruined. You want her to pay $500. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am. I returned
And Miss I didn't ask anything yet. And Miss Johnston, is your claim that you believe that she didn't want the dress back when she ultimately said she wanted it back, you put it in a bag, and you gave it back to her?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. When did you lend her the dress? Under what circumstances did you lend her the dress, and when did you ask for it back?
I lent her the dress. It was around August of 2001 when she was hired at the clinic, and she was my
What
boss.
clinic?
Telge Road Veterinary Clinic. It's a member of the Pet's Choice Company. They have
So
clinics.
she was hired at the same place that you were working?
Yes.
How come she asked you for a dress? Tell me
There
when.
was a Pet's Choice event that she needed a formal gown for, and of the people who worked at the clinic, I was most close to her size, I guess.
Where were you when she
got-
asked? I mean,
We
you
were at
alone?
work, so-
Were you? I know you have a fixed agenda. Listen to me. Did she come to you individually and ask you for a dress, or did she say to a group of people, anybody have a dress I can borrow?
It was in a group setting, but she asked me specifically.
And you said?
I said, as long as you return it dry cleaned in the condition that I loaned it to you, which didn't seem like it would be that difficult to do, then I don't mind.
Fine.
You know, I really didn't want to, but she's my boss, so.
How many times had you worn it?
I had worn it once for about 3 hours, and it had been dry cleaned afterwards and kept in a cedar closet wrapped
Is that
up.
the way you gave it to the defendant?
Yes. I have photographs of the dress, you know,
Okay.
what it looked like
Let me
when I
take a
loaned
look
it
at
to
it.
you. And if
When
I
did
can-
when did you first ask for it back?
About 2 weeks after she wore it, and she said that it was at the dry cleaners, which I assumed to be a pretty logical explanation to where the dress was.
Okay,
And
good. And so you asked for it 2 weeks later, and then again?
again, about a month later, and then 2 months later, and 3 months later. And in the meantime, she started to sabotage my job, and I quit. And at that point, I really got after her about getting it back, and she kept saying it was at the dry cleaners. She wasn't real
Let me see
specific.
the dress. Bert, could I
If
see
you
the
look
dress,
at
please?
the bottom hem, she pulled it down and then tried to hot glue back together, and
Can I
the
see
lining
it?
is ripped.
Bert, would you hand this back to the plaintiff and ask her to point out on the dress where it's ruined?
Thank you. There's little rips and tears in the fabric, but the thing
No,
that,
I want you to show me exactly where.
Okay.
The big thing that you're talking about is what?
if you look at the bottom hem, it's totally seared off right here, and it's been let go. There's a big rip right there, and the hem has been let down and then tried to reattach with hot
She's
glue.
shorter than you are.
I don't know why she would do this.
Listen to me. She put a hem on your dress.
Yes, with hot glue. And also, there's these huge, huge rips in the lining.
Well, she did that
Just-
because she couldn't shorten the dress without cutting the lining.
Yeah, and
Right?
then there's
Right?
a big old rip
Actually,
right here.
I didn't. I can't hem. I can't sew.
Apparently
I have no
not, because
creative.
she used hot glue
No, no,
to hem.
I have
I'm
no.
not speaking to you.
Yeah.
I have no creative bone in my body. I didn't hem it. I wore. I mean,
Just
I
a
wear
minute.
big heels.
Just a second.
Okay.
Clearly, the dress was, somebody
Right.
attempted to make the dress shorter. Could have been Velcro that somebody tried to
Right.
iron.
Yeah.
Yeah, right?
There wasn't. There was in the lining right there. There was, because when I stepped up on a step, I had on big heels, and I did step on the lining, and it did tear the lining.
So then you
But
tried
that
to
was
fix
the
it.
only thing that was torn was the lining, and I did try to fix the lining, yes. But
Okay.
since it's mesh, you can't really
Oh, okay. Fine.
sew it.
Would you like to see this?
Yes. Now let me take a look.
And if I can have my mom, she'll testify to the condition it was returned in. The dress,
Well, I
I
see it
wouldn't
now. You
loan
didn't have
it
it
out
clean.
the way that it looked.
You didn't have it clean, did you?
No.
Oh, okay.
She didn't either.
Oh, I see what happened. Your heel went through the dress.
Right.
It's happened to me.
If she would
But
have
I was
just
wearing my own
fessed up,
dress.
it would have been
Hell being
okay.
short.
Okay. Here you go. Thank you. Give it back to her. Okay. How did she return it to you?
It was wadded up in a plastic grocery bag, and it wasn't handed to me. It was thrown at me by Sandy.
Okay.
And
Who's
she
Sandy?
told me
This
she didn't
one?
want to hear anything else about the
Yes,
damn
ma'am.
dress.
This is Sandy.
This is
And it was given to you in a shopping bag, grocery bag.
Right.
Okay, Miss Johnson, I'll hear from you.
Basically, I was invited to a play that we had to do for work. And we were in my office, and we were discussing that I needed a dress. Never asked anybody for a dress. I have one at home that I was talking about. I just needed a shawl. The next day, she came in with a dress that had a shawl, and she said, I have this one. She is known for kissing up and what have you with the doctors that had worked there before I got there. So she brought me in this dress, and I was like, well, you know, I don't feel comfortable borrowing a dress. And she said, well, don't worry about it. I don't wear it anymore. I've only worn it once. So I borrowed it. A week later, I mean, you know, I borrowed it. It was at home. A week later, she asked me about it, and I said, yes, I was going to get it dry cleaned for you. There was no agreement beforehand. I said, yes, I was going to get it dry cleaned for you. She said, don't worry about it. I won't ever wear it again anyway.
You ultimately returned the dress to her in a shopping bag.
Yes.
Wrong!
Right. No, you're right. You're exactly right.
That's why I'm here.
But
That's why I'm here. You borrow a dress, you do the responsible thing. If you're the responsible
Right.
adult,
right.
and she's the young associate,
Right.
you do the responsible thing. You borrow a dress, you wear it, you take it to the cleaners, you have it cleaned, and you return it.
Right.
Now, you were probably embarrassed because you had ripped the dress, sort of let it slide. That doesn't mean that your dress, Miss Sharon, appreciates in value. It's not an
didn't.
antique. let me explain something to you. You didn't spend $500 for that dress.
I spent more than that. I have records and everything.
Oh, well, I'd like to see.
Okay, we went
I'd like to see the bill and the check that you wrote for that dress for $500.
We don't have the bill and the check because you can't return formal gowns, but about a week ago, my grandmother went to the Jessica McClintock store.
Listen to me.
Yes.
I want to see your check or a paid bill for how much you paid for the dress.
Your
What?
Honor, Sandy was there. I asked Courtney, I said, okay, it was a misunderstanding. When I asked you or told you about the dress, she said, don't worry about it. I won't ever wear it again. So I didn't. I mean, I honestly didn't. I go to work. I go to school. I have a 3.5-year-old.
I don't care.
Whatever. Yeah. So anyways, so she told me the dress was $150. The dress was $150. Sandy heard it. So I said, okay, well, since it was a misunderstanding, I'll pay you $75. That was before she quit. I went to a meeting 2 days later. I get a call from my receptionist, whoever, saying that Courtney never showed back up for work again, blah, 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 blah. Her mother starts calling saying she's a marketing saleswoman and needs the number to my corporate office. They're writing letters, trying to get my corporation to pay for it. The dress went from $150 to $300 to $500 to $700.
She ruined the dress.
Exactly.
She ruined the dress. She didn't ruin the dress on purpose, by the way, by putting her heel through it.
No, of course
That was, she didn't ruin it on purpose, but if she would have said to you immediately, listen, I ruined the dress, there's no point in having it cleaned because you're not going to be able to wear it because you're taller than I am.
Yes, ma'am.
It's going to be, unless you put beading all around the bottom or something
Yes.
else, which you could do. I mean, if you ever wanted to wear this dress again, you can do it. There is a way of fixing it. But that would
Well, we need to
involve
talk
you.
because I do want to do that.
What?
I would, if I could in any way salvage this down. I
Oh,
would.
you can salvage it.
Yes.
Believe me, I've looked at it. Other than the bottom, which you need because you're a little
Well,
tall. I'm
yes.
speaking. Don't you understand when I'm speaking? I'm not interested in what you're saying. And neither is he. You can save that dress if that's what you want. And I believe you can save that dress for $250. You can put a nice border on the bottom and have it clean for $25, and then you have a brand new dress that you put back. So I'm giving you a judgment for $250 because I think that the dress is worth at least that in salvage. That's all.
Case number 182 on the calendar in the matter of Hill versus Johnston.
Thank you.
Parties have been sworn in, Judge. You may be seated. Sir, have a seat, please.
Ms. Hill, it is your claim that the defendant was negligent in taking care of the cats that he was supposed to be sitting for while you were on vacation. You had vet bills, you wanted to pay for emotional distress, for damage done to your apartment, all to the tune of $5,000.
Yep.
Mr. Johnson says he did the best he could under the circumstances. When did you make this arrangement with Mr. Johnston to take care of your cats?
This would be probably in about July of last year.
And how many cats do you have?
At that time, I had 21.
21 cats, and how large a space?
I think the house is about 2,000 square feet.
And how did you know the defendant?
He was my boyfriend at the time, and actually he insisted on watching the cats. He was at my house almost every night, and he went through my feeding rituals and everything, and because he was my boyfriend, and we'd spoken about getting married or living together, it was just, that's what he wanted to do, and that was fine with me because we were...
Where were you going?
I was going to Connecticut to visit my relatives.
So this was voluntary on his part. You weren't paying him to do this. He was doing it because he cared about you.
Right.
Why don't you tell me why you think he is responsible for any damage and what the damage was in your house as a result of his caring for your cats?
Okay. When he came to the airport to pick me up in my car, which I had never given him permission to drive.
That's not true.
When I came home and I opened the door, I also have a dog. The dog was not very happy to see me. When I opened the door to the main part of the house, I didn't see any cats. There were no cats that would come out to see me, and I was concerned about that because they're very happy. You know, they love me and I love them. Well, bit by bit, I came upon them, and after about an hour, I found one cat, and I didn't find all of them. It turns out 6 were missing. In the end count, 6 were gone. I found one, and something was wrong with its tail. And there was blood on it. And I said, what happened to my cat? He said, I don't know. I don't know. So I went through the house, still, you know, trying to find them. And then he told me that one of them had died when I was gone. And I got very upset because I said, you know, I was not told. Why didn't you call me? Why didn't you tell me, you know, what happened? He said, I just came home and it was dead. So I did at that point, I was very upset. I was actually getting hysterical. I didn't want him around. I wanted him to leave my house. I was screaming at him to leave the house. He wouldn't leave. Eventually what he did is to make me be quiet. He pushed me. I pushed away from him, wound up on the floor, and he was choking me, and he was cutting off my air supply. And he said that, I can't remember if he said he would break my neck or he would kill me if I didn't stop screaming. I couldn't get him to leave my house. I went into my living room and I locked the door. And I just stayed in there. I don't know where I don't know if he slept in his van or what, but anyway, that was Saturday night, Sunday morning. The next day was Labor Day. I couldn't take the cat to the vet. The day after that, I take my cats. There are 2 cats. Both of these cats had been mutilated and abused, and I have pictures if you want to see them. There's a series of pictures. It's how they were before I left and what happened when I came back. They incurred, they had to have several operations. One of them almost lost his leg. Several of the cats have had their teeth knocked out. I found this about...
Were the cats fighting with each other? Were they having cat fights?
He said that they were...
Shh, I'm asking you.
I have not seen... Oh, no, when I came back? No.
You have pictures of destruction in the house.
Yes.
You think that he destroyed things in your house?
Yes.
Let me tell you this. All right. I don't want you to be nutty about this. He didn't volunteer to take care of your cats to torture them. Something happened with your 21 cats and 1 dog when you were gone. But if you think that his intentions were to get you out of your house so that he could mutilate your 21 cats and dogs, that's demented. Do you understand?
Yes.
So you don't think he did that, right?
No, that was not...
So you think that something happened and things got totally out of control for him?
Yes.
Fair statement?
Yes.
That he bit off more cats than he could take care of. Right? And didn't know quite how to deal with it. I'm an animal lover, so I understand how hysterical you were when you came home. Was she hysterical, sir?
I wouldn't put it quite so mildly.
Mr. Johnson, you were the one who picked her. You were the one who volunteered to take care of 21 cats and a dog. I mean, you got to be a little bit bonkers to do that. You know, that's a lot of responsibility, especially. I read your answer. You said a couple of these cats were crazy. They had to be kept in a room separate from everybody else and be fed separate, you know. And even the plaintiff talked about in her testimony her feeding ritual.
Yep.
Which is, you had a couple of cats that were a little more aggressive.
There's an order to who eats, so they make sure that
if they eat out of order, it's havoc.
It's havoc. Well, you know,
I
Ms.
mean,
Hill.
I'm supposed to eat and all. You see, there's got 20 cats going at each other.
You decided to assume the responsibility, Mr. Johnson.
I thought they were just little cats.
Mr. Johnson, you were there.
I know.
So you assumed the responsibility.
They're loving to her.
They weren't crazy about you.
Well, half of them were. The other half, oh my God.
Mr. Johnson, let me ask you this question. I don't want you to tell me everything that went on, because I have a few things after reading your answer. And, you know, we're not going to go on with this forever. I want to know, once you started to realize that you were over your head with this one, why didn't you call her in Connecticut and say you better come home?
Fear.
Fear of what?
Not following through with something that I had promised. We had talked about serious commitment and what goes along with that. And to be honest with you, I've never had a successful serious commitment in my life. And there's no way I was going to fail at this. That's why I insisted, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do it right.
But you couldn't.
No, I couldn't.
But you realized that you couldn't early on, so that you have to call her and you have to say, I cannot.
We talked every day. She goes, how are the babies? And she's talking about the cats, like her children. Oh, they're fine.
So you lied to her.
Yeah.
So
otherwise, she's going to get on the plane, come down, and probably kill me.
Judge Judy continues in a moment.
Either you did it on purpose or you did it because you were stupid. Which one was it?
I had 3 baseball buddies over one evening.
That's stupid.
And later today.
Did you ever hear the expression, no good deed goes unpunished? Yes. That's what happened. They are 2 amoral people.
Real cases, real people. Judge Judy. Lee Hill says ex-boyfriend James Johnston was negligent while taking care of her 21 cats. James says the whole ordeal was a nightmare.
There was some flooding that's talked about. And in your answer, Mr. Johnston, you say, I was running a bath, but ended up getting very distracted by the precise feeding procedure I was to follow. The next thing I knew,
It was a book.
there was water all over the place.
Do you know how long it takes to feed 21 cats?
Just a minute. I'm asking you
Like
a question.
5 hours.
Just a second. What were you doing? Mr. Johnson, who were you bathing?
Me. I was getting ready to. I got there about 9:30 at night. I had worked all day. It was
Just a
hot.
minute. So you were staying at her house?
Yeah, we were basically living together, unofficially.
Just a second. Unofficially, I don't care. I just
I
didn't
was
know
there
why you
every-
were running a bath when you were supposed to be feeding the cat, so you were living there.
I'm walking around naked, got the water going. I'm getting things ready.
I understand. So he was living in your house?
Yes.
All right. He was living in your house, and he had the keys to your car.
No, I never gave him the keys to my car.
Well, you must have left him home.
On the dresser.
no,
You must-
I
You mean he hot-wired your car?
no. When I came back, this person went through everything in my house.
That's not true.
And the key which was in a drawer. The reason I didn't say to him you could drive the car is because he doesn't have a good driving record. My insurance doesn't cover him. And it would be better not to go into that, make a mess out of that. I don't give him the key, he can't drive the car.
All right. Miss Hill, I think Mr. Johnson had the obligation, once he assumed the responsibility, to perform it properly. And if he could not, which he realized right away, according to him,
Third day.
he had the obligation to tell you when he spoke to you, day one, listen, you better get somebody else here to take care of your cats because I can't do it. And he chose not to do that.
Yeah.
Now I'll see your vet bills.
Okay.
How many cats do you have now?
I have 18.
A lot of cats.
I have a few other questions or statements to make.
Go ahead.
If you do want to take care of them, I don't know how this is good taking care of a cat. I have part of the other part of that broom with cat fur on it. I don't understand how that is good taking care of anything well. Running the bath that runs over, that floods the clothes, ruins the clothes, ruins shoes. I have some boots here that were ruined that were in the closet on the floor. I also have a box of photographs, just like my family when I was younger. It was in a big box, like a boot box, in a closet. I came back, and I kept finding things. For months I've been finding things. And I find a wet bath towel that was put in the box, closed in the box, and put in the closet. I don't understand why this was done. This has nothing to do with the cats. This to me is malicious. I don't know why he did it, but he did it.
Maybe he's just stupid.
That's not what. Well, for taking
Just a
on.
second. Just a second. Either you did it on purpose or you did it because you were stupid.
I
Which
didn't
one
do
was
it.
it?
I had 3 baseball buddies over one evening.
That's stupid.
Yeah, I got out of hand.
So either you did it on purpose or you did it because it was stupid. It was stupid. If you had 3 baseball buddies and one of them acted like an idiot, that's your fault.
2 of them did.
I also requested that nobody come to the house for the simple reason that there are a lot of cats. And the more people that are there, the more doors are left open, the more chaos there can be. So
Nobody
I said,
believed me about the amount of cats. I had to show them.
I also have estimates for the carpeting.
I'm not considering that. You left him in your house. He was living with you. That's your problem. You picked somebody who's unreliable. That's your problem. Vet bills are something else because this was a separate and unique thing. He said he would take care of your cats. That was your arrangement with him.
Yes.
If he couldn't do that, he had a responsibility, and the responsibility was either to board them or call her and say, get on the plane and come home.
There was one other option available that I wish I had taken.
Which was?
Her mother. She was a phone call away. She called me every day to make sure everything was okay.
Well, then you could have done that too, but she shouldn't have any out-of-pocket expenses because of your negligence in taking care of the cats. That was your agreement with her. And you have to take care of it. Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $1,389. That's all.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
The cat's tail got hurt because it was in a fight, and I yanked it out.
Then later on he said he accidentally electrocuted it.
I did what I could under circumstances.
He's got was it a Medal of Valor or a Purple Heart? I can't remember which. So, I mean, I don't believe it.
If you need to make a promise, make sure you can do it.
I had to lock myself in part of my house to keep away from him.
And now the next case.
All parties in the matter of Epps versus Ward. Step forward, please.
24-year-old bus driver Matisha Epps is suing her former friend, 22-year-old college student Melinda Ward, for an unpaid loan for a car.
Well, there's certain things, Miss Epps, in your complaint that I understand and some that I'm a little confused about. So let me start with what I do understand. You tell me if I'm correct. This was a friend of yours,
No, this is my cousin's girlfriend.
but she was a friend of yours,
Yeah.
and she wanted to buy a car.
Yes.
And she asked you for a loan for the down payment on the car.
Yes, Your Honor.
And you wrote out a check for the dealership for how much money? $2,500?
$2,500.
And you post-dated the check.
Yes, Your Honor.
She said to you, according to your complaint, don't worry, by the time the date comes when the check is going to be deposited, I will have enough money so that I'll give it to you and the check will be covered.
No, Your Honor. She's supposed to pay it to the finance company.
So she was going to pay it herself so that they would never cash your check.
Exactly, Your Honor.
Well, she didn't do that.
No.
And they cashed your check.
Exactly.
And you were forced to make good on that check.
Yes.
Now, Ms. Ward says she called you before the time that they cashed your check and told you to put a stop payment on the check because she wasn't going to be able to come up with the money.
Yes, my ex-fiance called Letitia Epps a week prior to October 21st and asked her to place stop payment on the check. For whatever reason, she didn't do so.
Just a second, because you weren't going to have the money.
Yes.
Did he ever call you?
Yes, Your Honor, he did.
And what did he say when he called you?
He told me that they weren't going to have the money yet, and so I could put a stop payment on the check.
And why didn't you do that?
It was just like a couple of days in advance. I don't believe it was a week in advance. It was just like maybe a couple of days in advance when he called and told me that they weren't going to have the money. And by the time that I called the bank, it was too late. They had posted the check.
But he called you before.
Yeah.
Well, why didn't you stop payment on it? Why didn't you call immediately that day?
I work 6 days a week and I work long hours.
If you work 6 days a week and long hours, it would seem to me that $2,500 is important to you. So now I understand, and I understand that you made the call. Did you, in fact, buy that car? Is not an answer.
Okay. Yes, I did buy the car.
Good. So you got the benefit of her $2,500. Is that right?
Yes.
So what difference does it make? What are you? Are you stupid? Is he stupid? If you said to me I couldn't afford to buy the car, and I didn't buy the car, but you bought the car using her $2,500, and now you don't think that you have to pay her back?
Well, had she have placed stop payment on the check, I wouldn't have even had the car.
Just a second. You're some piece of work. Now, what kind of moral character do you think that I believe that you have because you didn't pay her back the $2,500?
I tried.
What do you mean you tried? What does that mean you tried?
Well, after the check went through, my ex-fiance and I attempted to give her $200 in which she could have put towards the check. She said she didn't want anything to do with it. Yeah. She gave us the number to call whoever the financial company that was dealing with the check. They didn't want to deal with us because it was her check. So we definitely tried.
Well, you're making payments now on the car, aren't you?
No, I don't have the car anymore.
Where is it?
It got totaled in an accident.
When?
Last July.
You think I should believe everything you're telling me?
I don't have a reason to lie.
Go ahead.
I also like to say, this is my cousin. Miss Epps is my cousin. I went to her house. We did the best we could, honestly.
No, you didn't. You did the best you could. You were driving around in a car that she paid for. The best you could is to pay her back the $2,500.
That's what I'm saying. When we realized that we weren't going to have all the money, we went to talk with her. We contacted her, and we also went to talk with her about that. I went to her with money in my hand. She said because, like she said, because she works and everything, I was under the impression that she didn't want to deal with it. She told me to deal with it, the best way I could.
Did you ever hear the expression "no good deed goes unpunished"?
Yes.
That's what happened. They are two amoral people. I was sympathetic with them at first. If he called and said, listen, we don't have the money, and you didn't get around to calling and putting a stop payment on the check, but then they went ahead and bought the car and paid for it. How long did you drive that car before it was totaled?
A year.
And during that year, if they had said, every month I'm going to give you $200, you would have had your money.
Yes.
You didn't do that, did you?
Well,
The answer is yes or no. Did you do that?
We wasn't allowed to. No, we wasn't allowed to, Your Honor. If I can explain to you.
No, you can't explain to me.
Okay.
You mean to tell me that if every month you put $200 in an envelope and left it in her mailbox, that she would have taken the $100 bills and thrown them away? Is that what you think? Is that what you think?
No.
What kind of work do you do?
Right now, I'm a,
What kind of work do you do?
Actually, I'm unemployed right now.
Right.
I was a custodian.
Right, you're unemployed right now. Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $2,500. That's all.
Your Honor, this is case number 75 on the calendar in the matter of Hertz versus Gonzalez. Parties have been sworn in, Judge. You may be seated. Gentlemen, have seats, please.
Miss Hertz, your father was a doctor?
Yes, ma'am.
What kind of a doctor was he?
He was a chiropractic physician, ma'am.
And he passed away in April, is that
March
right?
28th.
According to your complaint, your father had a medical practice and his landlord was the defendant.
No, ma'am. Mr. Gonzalez is the strip mall building manager.
Okay, he was the manager of the building.
Yes, ma'am.
And you tried to get into your father's office in order to retrieve his files after his death.
Yes, ma'am, according to probate code.
Just answer my questions. Mr. Gonzalez would not let you into the building or your father's office when you wanted to get into the office, and it is your claim that because you could not get into the office at an appropriate time, you lost a substantial amount of money because you could have sold those files to another doctor if you had been able to do it sooner, and you're seeking damages in the amount of $5,000. Mr. Gonzalez has a reason that he says that he did not allow you to remove the files when you wanted to. He's counterclaiming for defamation because he says that you're bad-mouthing him to other people, calling him a tyrant. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
I want you to forget about your counterclaim. Forget about the counterclaim. But we're going to get to the plaintiff's claim, which I find rather interesting. All right, your father died. Did he die suddenly on March 28th?
No, ma'am. He entered the hospital with viral pneumonia on March 23rd and passed away on March 28th.
How old a man was he?
He had been 84 for 6 weeks.
Had he been in full-time practice up until the time he got sick?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, on what date was the first date that you tried to get into his office?
I arrived in Los Angeles April 3rd in the evening.
On April 3rd?
Yes, ma'am. I was unable to get here sooner than that because
So you were not here when your father died?
No, no, ma'am.
You were not here when he was in the hospital?
No, ma'am.
Where do you live?
Chicago.
Well, were you advised that he was sick and in the hospital on the 23rd of March?
Yes, ma'am. However, my father was always a very strong, healthy person. We're into natural health and healing. And we never expected him to be, we never expected this to happen.
How many children are there?
Just myself.
So who was with him when he was in the hospital? Nobody?
No one.
Oh. So you got here after your father died?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you get here after the funeral?
No, ma'am. The service, I went to the mortuary on April 4th, identified his body at the hospital, took him to the mortuary, and made the arrangements then. We had a memorial service for him.
Just a minute. So he died on March 28th, 28th, 29th, 30th, April 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. 7 days later,
yes, ma'am,
you managed to find a way to come from Chicago to Los Angeles.
Yes, ma'am.
Doesn't sound like a hell of a lot of devotion for me because all the healing didn't help him. He died on March 28th.
We never expected him to die. We thought he would be back in the office.
He did die.
Yes,
on March 28th. What took you 7 days to travel from Chicago to Los Angeles?
I had to make arrangements to take care of my apartment and as well as my birds. And I also had business arrangements to make.
And what did you do when you got here on the 4th of April?
Went to the office building in order to start taking inventory of the office.
Okay. Now, at that point, had you had anything from the probate court giving you the authority to go in there?
Ma'am, the estate was under $100,000. No court supervision was necessary according to probate code 13100, etc.
Were you armed with that information when you came to the office?
No, ma'am.
So, Mr. Gonzalez wouldn't let you in?
No, ma'am.
Good. That's exactly what he should have done. Should not have let you in to go through anything. He doesn't know who you are. As far as he knows, there's a will, and he left all of his estate and all of his property to Goodwill. He doesn't know if you have authority. You may be his only child, but he may not have liked you. So he could have left all of his property to somebody else. Isn't that right?
My father died intestate.
He doesn't know that. So you went there on the 4th of April, and he said you can't come in. What happened next?
Mr. Gonzalez had been apprised by a volunteer that worked for my father.
Don't tell me what he had been apprised in hearsay conversation with anybody. He has a tenant who died, leaving property in their office, and he is liable if, perchance, they find a will of your father's that says, I leave all of my possessions to whatever medical school he went to, whatever university he went to. And you go in there and you say, I'm his daughter, I'm entitled to everything. How does he know that you're entitled to anything? You had nothing from a court?
At that time, no.
Fine. When did you go back?
I received a phone call on April 13th, Saturday, from Mr. Gonzalez telling me that he was putting all of my father's possessions, office possessions, into storage, which I would be responsible for paying for. And if any of the movers hurt themselves, I would also be responsible for their medical bills. Mr. Gonzalez,
He can't do that either.
Mr. Gonzalez...
If he did it, he can't do that either, because you're not responsible for anything. You're not responsible financially for anything, and you're not responsible if these movers get hurt schlepping the files. So if he said that to you, he's 100% wrong. So far, I got a lot of lawyers here. Go ahead. So that's April 13th.
I was also told that my father's files, patient files, needed to be put into storage for 7 years by another practitioner. He gave me the names and phone numbers of 2 chiropractors who would be happy to store my father's files.
Fine. So you said no, thank you.
The files are the heart of the business. They're a sacred trust, and they are saleable items.
Ms. Hertz, let's get on with it. Stop with, you're pulling at my heartstrings. It took you 7 days to get from Chicago to Los Angeles. It was more important to take care of your birds than it was to come to say goodbye to your father. I have very little sympathy for that.
Judge Judy continues in a moment.
My father overpaid on his last month's rent.
Get on with it. That's not what you're suing him for. You keep making things up as you're going along, madam.
And later today...
I don't know how long you've been drinking, but I would guess, based upon my experience in the court, that you've been drinking a long time. That's not the way to bring up a child.
Real cases, real people. Judge Judy. Marcia Hertz says when her father passed away, building manager Miguel Gonzalez kept her from retrieving files from his business.
April 13th, he said he's putting the stuff in storage. What did you do next?
On the 15th, I arrived at the office early in the morning to make sure that the removal of my father's property did not happen. 7:30 in the morning, Mr. Gonzalez knocked on the door wanting me to sign a piece of paper. I refused to do so because there were no copies of it. He told me that he would make copies of this paper after I had signed it. And I said, no, make copies first. He wouldn't tell me what it was. Next thing he said was that he was going to call the LAPD to have me arrested for trespassing. They arrived 5 minutes later
and
threatened me with arrest that if I did not sign this piece of paper. I was bullied and coerced into signing it. It turned out to be a release of tenancy by April 30th, which gave me the entire month of April to remove my father's possessions, not by April 15th.
Okay, so?
Well, the tenant paid the rent for the month of April, which gave me until April 30th.
Well, that's what that says. You have until the 30th.
Yes, ma'am.
So?
And I did not have a problem with that.
So?
However, in here, because of the if I may continue?
Go ahead.
Because of the termination of the month-to-month tenancy is terminated by the death of the tenant, landlord is permitting Marcy Hertz, on behalf of and as representative of the estate of Albert Hertz, hereinafter Marcy Hertz, to enter the property for the sole purpose of removing possessions of the tenant. Marcy Hertz takes full responsibility for all property removed from the premises, including but not limited to the chiropractic records contained herein.
Ms. Hertz, I don't get the problem, madam. I don't get the problem at all. You signed something that says you take full responsibility for the files as a representative of the estate, even though he doesn't know you're a representative of the estate. And you have to be out of the premises by April 30th.
Which is the reason I was here. However, on April 13th, he threatened to remove the contents of Dad's office.
So? He didn't?
No, he did not.
So what? What are you here for?
I'm here because my father overpaid on his last month's rent back in 1987.
That's not part of your claim. That's not part of your claim.
All right.
Then what are you here for?
I'm here because the overpayment was more than 50% of what his current rent was, which would have given me into the middle of May to sell the files.
Get on with it. That's not what you're suing him for. You keep making things up as
The
you're going
value of
along,
the-
madam.
Excuse me, ma'am. The value of the files decreases every day. The
So?
goodwill.
So?
The files are now worthless.
Listen, you were able to get the files as of April 15th. Is that right?
Ma'am, I was able
Judge-
to gain entrance to the office.
You were able, once you signed that document, assuming responsibility, on April 15th, you were able to get the files. Is that right or wrong?
You are correct, ma'am.
Good. And you say that because you weren't able to go and get the files either on the 4th or the 8th, the value of the files diminished because it took an extra week. Is that right? Is that right?
I had to find another chiropractor to take my father's practice over.
Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. Each
Good.
day of his passing, the files diminish.
Then Miss Hertz, I would have suggested that if that's the way you felt, you should have made it your business to get there a week earlier after your father died. Because if you had gotten there on the 28th, you would have resolved this matter by the 8th of April.
No,
but
ma'am.
you chose to take care of your birds instead of coming and taking care of your father's business, and you want somebody else to be responsible for that. It's ludicrous. Your case is
Ma'am.
dismissed. That's all.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
She was going around my neighborhood with my peers saying that I am mafia connected, that I have LAPD people in my pocket, intimidating her.
He knew very well who I was before I even came down. We were in telephone contact prior to my coming down here.
And now the next case.
All parties in the matter of Mason Wilson versus Wilson. Step forward, please.
Thomas Mason and his fiancée, Joanne Wilson, are suing Joanne's son, 21-year-old fast food worker Jesse Wilson. Joanne says during an argument, Jesse assaulted her.
You're Miss Wilson.
Yes.
Is that right? And this is your boyfriend. His name is Mason.
Yes, that's correct.
And this is your son.
Yes.
And it is your claim that your son assaulted you, which resulted in your hospitalization. You want him to pay for any unreimbursed medical costs that you had, as well as for something for pain and suffering. I don't know what Mr. Mason is doing here unless he paid some of the bills. Did you, sir?
I paid them, Your Honor,
You
yes.
paid it. You paid them, that's why you're here. Your son says that he didn't assault you, that you fell over a table because you were drunk. Is that right, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. When did this incident occur?
January 15th. Yeah.
Where?
In my house.
Who was at home?
I was at home. He was there. In fact, he was leaving that day.
Who was he?
My son. And
Leaving permanently?
Yeah.
Why?
He was moving out.
Why?
Well, he thought $25 a week was too much. He said he should pay nothing to live with me.
How old is he?
He's 21.
Go ahead. So what
So
happened?
we got into argument that night, and
What did you get into an argument about?
miscellaneous things, and I quite don't remember. I remember falling, and I remember him picking me up, and he was saying sorry to me. He said, "Ma, I'm sorry," and he put me on the couch. After that, I don't remember nothing, except when going to the hospital, they had to put the thing around my neck. They had me in a board, and then they had to rush me from that hospital to another hospital.
The only thing you remember is him picking you up,
Yeah.
saying,
I remember him saying, "Ma, I'm sorry." He picked me up and put me on the couch. And then I woke up later on, and my boyfriend came later that day, that night, and he made me go to the hospital. I wasn't going to the hospital. I was dizzy and everything, but I told him I would be fine. And he told me, no, I think you better go to the hospital. Something don't look right.
had you been drinking?
Yeah, I had been drinking.
How much?
I had maybe a half a pint that night.
Half a pint of what?
Rum.
What time did you start drinking?
It was about 6 o'clock that night.
Do you drink every night?
No.
How often do you drink?
I drink on a weekend, occasionally on weekends.
You have a drinking problem?
No.
You have anything to drink today?
No.
All right, Mr. Wilson. Your mother says that you said sorry. You want to tell me what happened?
I had came home from work at the time of the day of my birthday, and
This was your birthday?
yes, my birthday. I had came home, right, and she was drunk because I smelled it on her breath. Me and her got into an argument over how stuff was going in the house. I told her I
Like
have
what?
like me, sometimes I might leave something around the house, something like a cup or a plate or something. I understand. Sometimes I do intend to forget stuff, but I always do what I have to do in the house, you know. And when she kicked me out, I was getting all my belongings, and she had grabbed me.
Where did she grab you?
She grabbed me in my left arm, and when I told her, "Can you get off me?" she did not want to let go. And when I took my arm like that to get her off me, she had fell back and lost her balance.
You didn't hit her, did you?
No, I would never assault my mother.
You never put your hands on her?
No.
Well, she doesn't remember what happened. All she remembers is falling and you saying you're sorry. So what are we doing here? Mr. Mason, what are we doing here, sir?
Well, Your Honor, this has been going on for quite a while. It isn't this the first time. He broke a window once before in the house because he got mad.
But
I have bills here, and I have the original letter that I wrote to him, gave him plenty of time. All I was looking for was my original amount of money that I put out.
For what?
For the expenses of what it costs to take her to the hospital.
Just a minute. There's no proof he assaulted her, sir.
Well, I had asked her what happened when I came home. She called up this friend of mine. I was at his house, and I came home. She had told me what happened, that Jesse had pushed her, and I said, you best you go to the hospital, get checked out. We went to one hospital, and they needed better equipment. They had to transfer her to another hospital, and they weren't sure if she would be paralyzed from the neck down or not. And like I said, it's not a question of just now. It's been a question of a problem when the $25 a week that he's paying rent. We're going to get television, the telephone, the whole thing over here for $25 a week. And then he wanted to live for nothing.
How long have the two of you been living together?
Over 2.5 years.
And whose house is it?
It's her apartment.
It's her apartment?
Yeah.
And he's not
so
on the lease.
Just a second. So you're living in her apartment?
Half and half, Your Honor. I have my own apartment right around the corner.
What do you mean half and half?
I stay sometimes, a lot of times. I stay on the average 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks at a time.
Listen to me. It's none of your business.
Okay.
This is between Miss Wilson and her son. Has nothing to do with you. Nothing. As far as I'm concerned, Miss Wilson shouldn't be here with her son today. She had a little too much to drink, and if she got into even a shoving match with her son and she fell, that's unfortunate. Probably was tipsy to begin with and fell. She shouldn't be fighting with her son. She shouldn't be fighting with her son on his birthday. And you shouldn't pour salt in the wound because you're not family. You don't precipitate coming to court when you're not even related. Precipitate a mother from bringing a lawsuit against a child. That doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't let anybody pressure you into bringing a lawsuit against your son, which you probably wouldn't have done on your own.
No, but I think he deserves it, especially when he busted my window. I wasn't even supposed to let him live with me. Housing don't want him there because he got kicked out of his sister's house because of the same problem.
Miss Wilson, let me tell you something. I'm not giving him any stars for good behavior.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how long you've been drinking, but I would guess, based upon my experience in the courts, that you've been drinking a long time. Long time.
Okay.
That's not the way to bring up a child. So if you have a child that is troubled at age 20, you look to yourself and say, what did I do as a mother? Was I drinking most of the time? Was I doing the right thing most of the time? And if you were not, you don't precipitate a lawsuit because you set zero example for him. Just want you to think about that. Your lawsuit's dismissed.